And we are live. Happy Monday morning. It's Monday morning here at Mystery Island Studio. I'm John O'Loughlin. Welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff Lives. And we are broadcasting here for the reason of exploring my minefields, my own ideas of what's really behind the scenes that are behind the scenes that are behind the scenes. What's the tiniest Russian doll in the collection look like? Who is really behind all of this stuff? And I have been focusing on the idea of the synarchy for about 2 weeks now. And while I'm doing that, I'm absorbing the new book by H.P. Albarelli and his associates called Coup in Dallas. And a very, very interesting book. I am giving myself a couple more days, and then I'll give you a full report on that book on Thursday night this week. As always, you can look at our calendar at screamingospreys.com, kept up for us by the great Catherine Jumping Mouse. Yay, Catherine, we love you. All right. Oh, don't stare at Himmler. I'm sorry. I don't like to put ugly, people on my show, but I think ugliness is important sometimes. It conveys not only the appearance, but also something about the character of these people. And this is a very, very dark character indeed, Heinrich Himmler, who was the head of the SS, the head of the death squads, the ones that really incorporated the worst of Nazism, and in the name of racism, in the name of the great Nordic Aryan supermensch. So that became World War II. And one of the things that I've been interested in is all of this crazy saber rattling or poking of the bear, as we used to say, with regard to the Biden administration um, and Blinken trying to get something started in Ukraine. Trying to start something. I've told you many times. My mother really defined the whole essence of morality was, well, one of her sayings, she had a number of them, but one of the ones that always sticks with me in times like this is never listen to somebody that says, hey, let's you and him go fight. Isn't that what happened to us in World War I and World War II? Isn't that why our families and towns and cultures were devastated? Isn't that why? Because we were invited to go fight somebody. Well, anyway, cheers. Catherine is going to have our Screaming Ospreys mug display on the website. She said tomorrow, so we'll keep our fingers crossed. She's wonderful, and she does a lot of work for us. So let's get back into where I wanted to start today, which is Mr. Blinken. Well, let me say hello. Hello, Melissa and Corky and Garden Girl. And hello to Ezra, Laura, Christy. David is here. Michael Moorhead, hello. Osprey Nation, indeed. And boy, oh boy, it's the 31st of January, which means it's only, 8 weeks till spring? But even less than that till the Ospreys come back here to Mystery Island. They'll be back around the 10th of March or so, just in time for St. Paddy's Day, which we always celebrate here at McDuff Lives. So hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. And, I apologize. Sometimes I decide to do 11 a.m. show on the spur of the moment. And I did notice on my email that somebody's doing a meeting or something with John Wilkins the same time. And I'm sorry. I'm just going to do from time to time. I'll just decide I want to do an 11 a.m. and I apologize, but we can't always coordinate. So, but with regrets, I'm sorry about conflicting with anyone who's trying to do this important work. Um, Now, here's the substance of my show this morning is a statement recorded in CNN, big headlines, January 23rd, 2022. So this is a week ago. Blinken says, quote, a single additional Russian force, unquote, entering Ukraine would trigger U.S. response. And yeah, I think I can get that up there for you real quick. So there you see the headline, and very, very serious Tony Blinken with lots of digital stuff behind him, all connected up there like he's probably got wires in his brain. And, some microwaves telling him, well, never mind. Don't go there, John. Don't go there. It's too early in the morning. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken amplified his warning against a Russian invasion of Ukraine, saying, quote, a single additional Russian force entering Ukraine, quote, in an aggressive way would result in a severe response by the U.S. and its allies. Quote, if a single additional Russian force goes into Ukraine in an aggressive way, as I said, that would trigger a swift, a severe, and a united response from us and from Europe, Blinken told CNN's Dana Bash on State of the Union on Sunday. Okay. Though U.S. officials have been issuing warnings to Russia in recent days, President Joe Biden muddled the message of severe consequences last week, saying at a news conference that a minor incursion might not trigger the same response from NATO as an invasion. The president later clarified that any Russian troops crossing Ukraine's border would constitute an invasion, and Blinken, following a meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov last week, also warned that any Russian invasion of Ukraine would be, quote, met with a severe and united response. Well, isn't that interesting that Secretary Blinken, Secretary of State, he's the guy that's sitting in the seat of John Foster Dulles, right? Sure, he's a Democrat, but he's still sitting in that powerful seat, the one that sometimes takes it upon itself to create and conduct foreign policy, especially when your brother's running the CIA. But even now, you have this Blinken who clearly has ties to Central Europe, Ukraine, and the nobility there through family relations, is a prime candidate in my mind for a synarchist, a person whose loyalty is to the old imperial money of Europe, which is most easily represented by the term the Black Nobility. The Black Nobility is identified very well by the LaRouche publications and otherwise. You can even find a Wikipedia on it, but it's and they call themselves the Black Nobility. It's not like it's a term of derision. It's just that that's the color they go by. It's the old money families that generally claim to be the descendants of the Roman Empire. They fled Rome and ended up in Venice in many cases, or perhaps Genoa or Milano, or someplace else where their wealth was then able to be put back into productive use and to continue to grow. And as we've studied with Webster Tarpley and all of the great work of people like Jeffrey Steinberg and Harley Schlanger and others at the LaRouche organization, that money founded the monetary regime of Amsterdam, and then took it into London and is now the City of London, as well as that's extended into Wall Street and our West Coast. And then from there, just the tentacles extend everywhere. They're not done yet, though. They haven't completed their empire. And that's where Russia presents a problem. Is it my imagination, or is all of this provocation really coming from the synarchist types in our government? Especially when you realize that, hey, Biden didn't want to say that. You know, Biden says, well, we might not get too upset if a small incursion happened, a little incursion, you know. What? So whoever's controlling Blinken, said damage control, damage control. And so they got Biden back in line. So at this point, okay, a week later, now we know that Zelensky himself is saying, "Hey, there's no threat. Don't get everybody all upset. Don't send all the people home. They're safer in Kiev than they would be in the streets of Baltimore," which may be true. Okay, so that's CNN. Spokesman for who? For the deep state, the blob, and I think also it's fair to say the synarchy. Now let me push this another stage further by introducing from this morning or yesterday's um, Zero Hedge by Tyler Durden. This article, let me get it up for you. It is Stockman says, this goes way beyond Wag the Dog 2.0 as Ukraine pushes back against American hawks, by Tyler Durden. It looks like we have plunged so deeply into the theater of the absurd that we now have a case of, quote, Albania don't want the ball, unquote. Our reference, of course, is to the apocryphal football story about a coach repeatedly signaling a play from the sidelines, only to have the quarterback keep breaking huddle while frantically waving his arms and shouting, "But Leroy don't want the ball." Now, as an aside, I have to tell you, that's an old Andy Griffith story. And it wasn't Leroy, it was, yeah, give John Henry the ball. And John Henry, they'll say he don't want the ball. Anyway, one of my favorite people, Andy Griffith. He sang opera in college. Yeah, very fine voice. Okay, this is Durden saying, that is to say, Ukrainian President Zelensky, a former television comic, here you go, apparently knew all about the 60-year-old American story, at least according to the geniuses at CNN who reported it below. That the White House quickly disavowed the Ukraine story is undoubtedly your authentication. And here's just the story. A call between U.S. President Joe Biden and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Thursday, quote, did not go well, a senior Ukrainian official told CNN. Biden warned Zelensky an imminent invasion is a, quote, distinct possibility. On the, quote, long and frank call, Biden warns his Ukrainian counterpart that an invasion was now virtually certain once the ground had frozen later in February, unquote. Zelensky, however, restated his position that the threat from Russia remains, quote, dangerous but ambiguous, and it is not certain that an attack will take place, the official said. Zelensky urged his American counterpart to, quote, calm down the messaging, unquote, warning of the economic impact of panic, according to the official. You might think so. For instance, it's apparently not just President Zelensky who is not seeing the white of those Russian eyes. The country's defense minister also weighed into that effect. So let's pierce the fog of hysteria by asking Ukrainian Defense Minister Reznikov what's going on. Quote, I can absolutely say that to date, the Russian armed forces have not created a strike group that could make a forceful invasion of Ukraine, unquote. Okay. Skipping a little bit more of his text, I just want to read this line from the movie Wag the Dog. Do you remember Wag the Dog? I remember it vaguely. It was, if I'm not mistaken, Dustin Hoffman was in it. Anyway, this reminder of the dialogue is worthwhile right now, I think so, in connection with Ukraine. So here's the dialogue. Wait, we can't afford a war. We're not having a war. We're having the appearance of a war. We can't afford it. What'll it cost? But they would find out. Who's going to find out? The American people? Who's going to tell them? What did they find out about the Gulf War? One video of one bomb falls down a chimney. The building could have been made out of Legos. You want us to go to war? That's the general idea. With who? I'm working on it. Albania? Why? Why not? What do you know about them? Nothing. Precisely. They seem shifty, standoffish. Who knows from Albania? Who trusts Albanians? What did Albania ever do to us? Well, what did they do for us? This is why we have to mobilize the B-3 bomber. You really want to go to war with Albania? We don't have a choice. This is what you do to make it real. Get your press office right now to deny it. It didn't happen. There is no report of Albanian activity. They have to deny it. It didn't happen. Deny. News from the president on his visit to China. Another sort of news, however, has emerged from the presidential quarter. We turn now to Melissa Gardner at KZAB in Santa Fe with this breaking news, quote, thanks, Richard. Today, a local Firefly girl accused the president of blankety blank misconduct. There you have it. There is no imminent war, threat of war, even tiny specter of war in the Ukraine. It's all White House theater, and it's nothing more than like the director Barry Levinson's Suitcase Nukes from Albania, distracting from Biden's plunging poll figures. So it needs to be said, compared to Donald Trump's statist excesses and pretensions, the Biden team's disgusting war movie would have made Dustin Hoffman so proud at the end that they would not have had the gall to kill him with a heart attack. Okay. The article goes on. It's quite worth reading and studying, but I'm going to move over now to the Heinrich Himmler part of my presentation here this morning. So here's another layer to what we just read that I want to suggest to you that is worth thinking about. Biden is telling Zelensky there's going to be a war when February, when the ground gets hard enough. You have to wait till it freezes, I guess, for the tanks to roll. There's going to be a war in February, Biden says. Now, let's look at Biden for a second. Is Biden the goofy, doddering idiot that we're portrayed that he is? That, those of us that are on the conservative side of politics are fed a Joe Biden by the media that is a complete nincompoop. And he muddles things, right? Well, on the other hand, when you read people that have done in-depth studies of him, you get the idea that he is actually an agent for some deeper faction, perhaps indeed the Jesuits. He's famously said that he's a Zionist. Well, what does that mean, except for he's willing to put the Zionist interests above other interests? But is he really as stupid as the media wants us on the conservative side to think? Or does he know something that really there is going to be a war and Zelensky's trying to, say, no, no, there's not going to be a war. Forget about it. Don't scare us like that. Don't scare me like that, President Biden. Now, in 1939, there was a series of events called Operation Himmler that was organized by Himmler. And these are false flag events. Now, what I'm suggesting to you is that the parties that put Himmler up to that are the same parties that are putting Biden up to his warmongering. The Synarchy. The old money from Europe and the combination of the merchant opium running elite families of America working together, although often competing inside of it, to devour the rest of the world, either to own it and preserve it and keep it, or to destroy it. That's, to me, that's what Skull and Bones means. It means death. And that's the death's head on the uniforms of the SS. So I'm talking about the psychological manipulation of the nation by false flag attacks. And now think about the beginning of World War II for a minute. You remember September 1st, the invasion of Poland, September 3rd, the declaration of war, 1939. The initial act that started the war was Germany's invasion of Poland. Why did Germany invade Poland? Well, because Germany wanted to go west and murder a whole lot of people and take over their property and have their expansion and go back to to having these great German run big farms and the good old days. Well, they did not respect the Polish nation in any regard anyway, but diplomatically, how did they get away with it? And they got away with it by using a false flag attack. Now, you've probably read it or maybe even remember when I tell you that it involved a radio station. And it was a radio station on the border that the Germans, the Nazis, sent a team into the Polish territory. No, they sent a team of people dressed as Polish. And I don't have the details of what they were dressed as, but they were persuaded. They were portrayed as invaders that took over the railroads, the radio station, and this is called the Gleiwitz incident. And in studying the Gleiwitz incident, the historian that I really like to follow, who just goes by Tick, Tik is his YouTube name, he studied it and he revealed that there was a whole series of false flags that were done. And the method that they did it uh, was successful in that there was enough of them that Hitler could say in his speech that there was all these provocations by the Poles that caused him to have to uh, invade to stop the Polish incursions. And that was all a lie, and it was all concocted by Himmler. So let's just listen to a little bit of Tick's version of this incident. I'm going to organize this for you so you can not only listen but also see what he's doing. So this is him going to describe the accepted version of the Gleiwitz incident, the way that history books tell it.
According to the accepted version of events, the Gleiwitz incident was part of Operation Himmler, a series of false flag attacks designed to give Hitler an excuse to go to war.
Now, I just want to stop on that for a second to let you look at that picture. And you see, not only is Himmler there, but also Heinrich, but who else is there is Mueller. And this is Gestapo Mueller organizing the false flag attacks with Himmler.
To give Hitler an excuse to go to war. As part of this plan, concentration camp prisoners were to be given lethal injections, shot, and then brought to the Polish border areas. This is supposedly why the code words canned goods were used. Photographs would then be taken of the dead bodies lying about as proof that the Polish were raiding across the border into Germany. In 1945, Naujoks explained, "The incident at Gleiwitz in which I participated was carried out on the evening preceding the German attack on Poland. As I recall, war broke out on the 1st of September 1939. At noon on the 31st of August, I received by telephone from Heinrich the code word for the attack which was to take place at 8 o'clock that evening. Heinrich said, in order to carry out this attack, report to Muller for canned goods."
All right. Mueller is Gestapo Mueller, and he is to supply the dead bodies of people taken from asylums that were killed with injections and then shot to make it look like they were involved in an attack. And that is essentially what the story was. Now, what Tick has done is dug into that particular story, and it's a very interesting episode. I recommend that you look at the whole thing, but I'm not going to share any more of it. Just to say that what he uncovered was the fact that this particular soldier, Naujoks, was being interrogated at the War Crimes Commission. And what he said was that it was the radio station incident that happened on the night of the 31st of August. And he's telling this to the American interrogators to save his skin, right? He's confessing. And he says, well, yeah, we went in there and we took over the radio station and we laid the bodies, but we couldn't, we screwed up. We didn't get the broadcast going, and it all kind of didn't work out. He said, well, wait a minute. Why is it in such a big incident? Well, if you dig further, you find out that that incident with him going to the radio station didn't even happen on August 31st. It happened much earlier in August. But there was a number of other incidents that were done, that were set up by Himmler and Heinrich and Mueller all along the border with Poland, so that Hitler could make a speech that say that the Poles have invaded and we have to respond. Now, where that resonates with me is Blinken. When Blinken says a single additional Russian force entering Ukraine. And now Biden is saying there's going to be a war. Does that indicate to me that there's the likelihood that false flag attacks are being set up? That there's going to be these false flag incidents just like Himmler did? And what was the effect of Himmler's false flag incidents? It was nothing less than World War II. Without the false flag incidents, Hitler couldn't make the speech. If he couldn't make a speech, then he could not encourage his countrymen, the patriots, to take up arms. He had to have some reason. And this is, remember the word casuistry? Casuistry? That something has to happen, and you make up a reason why it happened that's palatable to the people. And that's management of history, management of the understanding of entire nations and the entire world at this point. If you can control the message, then you can control the present. And he who controls the present can control the future. Understanding that it is the same group of people. Poland and Ukraine are basically have, from the north to the south, they have over history been the border between Western Europe and Russia. Now, what is the force behind Blinken that's saying, let's go to war? What is the force that's behind Biden that is pushing him to create a war, even though Ukraine is saying we don't want a war. We don't want to go to war. John Henry don't want the ball. We don't want the ball. We don't want to carry the ball for you, coach. But Biden knows that something's up. Something's going to happen. Well, if he fails to convince Zelensky, then maybe that's the end of Biden. Maybe at that point they pull the plug, or give him his happy home wherever he wants to kick back and let Jill take care of him, because he'll fail. Because that's what I would say. If he fails to get something started, then he's out. Well, let me see how you guys are thinking. Oh, hey, Indica's here. Strawman, Kim, Alda Son, Baker. Hey, Baker, I owe you an apology. I noticed that you've been a very active and helpful wrench over the past few shows that I said, there's only Kathy Sue, but it's not true. We've got Baker too. And thank you very much for always taking note of the books that I refer to, so people can catch them on their own. And in my publications, I do appreciate it. Publication, only have one. It's this one, McDuff Lives. I want to thank everybody that supports my Patreon. If you want to join the Patreon, it's at screamingospreys.com. There's a button there. And as I say, we're redoing the website. You may hit a maintenance moment, but just reload the site and it'll be right back up. And thanks very much for being with me this morning. I think what I'm trying to say is there is a synarchy, and it is centered in the old money of Italy, France, Austria, Hungary, Germany, but centered in that very, what we might call just Central Europe. Centered around maybe Vienna would be a good place to put in the middle, or or Bavaria. I think Mueller is from Bavaria. That area there has generated an awful lot of warfare. And the idea that they've still got the fondi, the great funds of money, makes a lot of sense to me. And that they would control, as we talk about, not only the visible economy, but the underworld economy. And this is where I think we have mafias from, is because empires benefit from having organized crime. Because the organized crime makes a deal with the empire saying, okay, you get your cut. And then the organized crime keeps everybody in line and robs everybody whenever needed to be robbed, just like the old nobles did to the peasants in medieval times. It's a very medieval system, and one they like to push us back into. Let's see what folks are saying. Enkidu says, Russia will take over Ukraine because of it doesn't need the USA, and NATO will take it and put their military equipment at the border of Ukraine to Russia. Yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense that Russia would just say, okay, we're going to take it. I like the idea, or at least I would propose the idea that people think about allowing Russia peacefully to take the part up to the Dnieper River, which is the river that flows through Kiev. But that's far beyond my ability to judge. But it seems to me that there are many peaceful solutions available. But what I'm saying, and Kadu and others, is that the Synarchy doesn't want a peaceful solution. The Synarchy is in the business of divide and conquer. And that means grinding bones. That means killing people. That means that's how they live. They are the great corporate killing machine. And they do not want peace, especially not with a free population. They don't want peace with a population that can turn on them. Not at all. This is for the whole game. This is the game for control of the world. And the combination of the financial system and the old Roman Empire is making a move. USA needs the sweet water reserves of Russia. I love to talk to you more about water in Kadu, because I know that's one of your great specialties. And I do watch a show called One Pacific Redwood on YouTube. I imagine you've run into him. He's a terrific weatherman. He lives in Southern California and reports not only on California weather, but mainly he's just terrific at using the uh, the satellite pictures that we get from NOAA and GOES and the other ones to demonstrate how the weather's being manipulated by the use of electromagnetic waves and electromagnetic forces, not only from ground-based radar, but also from satellite-based microwaves and radars and things that I don't know much about, but I'm pretty satisfied that he's doing really good work on One Pacific Redwood on YouTube. David Underdown. I'm going to see what David on Wednesday night here at McDuff Lives. But tonight, we're going to have the great Bill Taylor will be back with more reporting on his great work into the Kaiser Wilhelm family and Gibson Island. His blog at D State Analytics is always worth looking at, and you can subscribe to his blog by visiting D-State Analytics. I think that's a .com. All right, everybody, thanks very much for listening. I think we just keep finding more and more evidence that there is this synarchy-related problem that I can say the blob and I can say the deep state, but who's pulling the strings behind both the Republican and the Democratic parties? That is the question raised by Andy Craig's great book, Presidential Puppetry. Who is pulling the strings? Somebody is, and we are on the case.